When I was a little girl, I'm not sure when you're talking about.
When you were in...
We lived in Colville by my grandmother Reese, and my mother worked, and we four children just lived. In the first time, or when we moved into a little garage actually, and that's where we stayed until Mother had enough money as a county recorder to build a house, and she built a house, and that's where we lived, was in that house in Orem, until I left, got married and left.
Do you remember when you lived in Park City with Grandma and Grandpa Tree?
No, I don't remember that. I know when that I did, because when Mother left my dad and went to school, why they took care of us until my mother finished her schooling in 6 months. So we stayed with them that long, and I remember when Mother left. I can remember when David was born, and that was been before she went to school. So in between there, but that's about what I remember.
You don't remember when Ira was born, or when David was, or when Noreen was born?
I do not remember when they were born. No, I don't.
So
I remember when David was born, but I don't remember when the others were born. So that's.
So where did you go to school first when you were?
I went to in Wanship. When Mother finally left my dad, which she should have done much sooner than she did, but when she did, we were moved to Wanship, and I went to school for a year there. And Aunt Irene came and lived with us and taught school, and she taught me in the first grade. And then we went to Park City when Mother went down to get her degree, and I went to Park City High School for 1 year. And Aunt Irene was my teacher in the first and second grade both.
Then you went to high school. At what high school?
North Summit.
North Summit High. Was that 9th grade on?
No, when we went back to Colville, I went to the the grade school there and finished out school, and then I went to junior high and high school there too. Junior high and high school was the same thing there. We didn't have separate ones because there weren't that many kids there. But that's where I went to school, and I graduated in 1947. Yeah, 1947 is when I graduated. And then I had met your dad when, because we went to I was in debate. That's what I did, was we're in debate. And your dad had gone to the Japan, and he came back, and the teachers at the high school asked him to come and go with us and help the high school judge the debates. So he did. And that's where I met him, was when he was the judge of the debate that I debated in high school.
When did you first meet Mandy and Dave Welsh? Do you remember that, when you first went to their house?
I don't remember when I went to their house the first time. When I know that your dad had his friend call and asked me on the first date we went on, and he called the second time, and I said, well, if Stan wants to ask me for a date, tell him to do so. So he called me, and from then on, he called me whenever we went on dates.
What do you remember most about school days? What did you have for lunch at school, or
we took our lunches.
When you got home, or?
We took our lunches to school, and when we were at school, Mother worked all the time, so we always had a job when we got home from school to start fixing lunch or supper, because Mother would be home. Mother worked 5.5 days. They worked on Saturday all day, a half a day. So she worked, and we always did something. There was always work to do, and we got along just fine. I don't ever remember being put upon, but then...
When did you learn to read? Was reading...
I learned to read in the first grade. I've always read.
And you liked reading when you started to read?
I guess I've never stopped reading, so I must have. I still, it would be very sad if I couldn't read. So
Yeah. What was the hardest thing about school for you, or was anything very hard?
mostly the one hard thing I remember was when I went to grade school or school back down in Colville, and the kids back then you didn't get divorced, and mother was divorced, so they were a little bothersome, but it didn't bother me because I was happy at home and knew there were people at home who loved me, and so I didn't bother me too much. So that was good. So
Yeah.
and then when I got into debate, I did just fine, and I got along well at high school. So
And were you a class officer in high school?
I
It seems like you were on a yearbook or something that I.
oh I worked on the yearbook a lot. Yeah, I did, and I went to Salt Lake and talked to him about getting the yearbook published. But I don't remember exactly what I did, but I knew I did something on the yearbook.
Yeah.
But mostly it was debate, and I enjoyed that, and that's where I met your dad.
And what about when you were Miss Colville? I know you were Miss Colville, or you were an attendant to Miss Colville.
I was an attendant. That was just during the big parades. When was it?
Was that after high school?
Huh?
Was that after high school that you were?
No, it was while I was still in high
You
school.
were still in high school.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and you rode the parade for. The
Yeah, I
city of
rode in the
Colville.
parade in Colville, and then it was when they took the float to Park City too. So I was up and went on the parade up in Park City, but I don't remember too much about that. But it was fine.
Yeah,
So
I bet it was fun.
yeah,
So you got married when you were pretty young.
I did. I was 19 when I got married. So
You got married June 23rd, 1949.
yep.
So where did you live after you got married? At first, was it Oakley or was it?
I'm just trying to think exactly where it was when we first got married. I'd have to think about that for a minute because I can't remember where we went when we first got married. Not very far, I don't think, until...
I know you came back down and went to BYU, is that right?
Well, when after your dad had gotten his, when he went to school, then yeah, we did come back and yeah, so.
And that's where you had Julie.
Julie was born in
1950.
Yeah, in 1950, and I was just trying to think whether she wasn't born at home. She was born in the hospital there was a hospital in Colville.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, but I don't know that she was born there. I think she was born in that hospital in Colville, and then they closed it. It isn't open now, so.
Uh-huh. So I know Kent was born in Provo.
Yeah, and so was Ruth, you, and David. Yeah,
Well,
David. No, mother was pregnant with David when we left my dad.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you would have been born then.
Do you remember living with your dad?
No, I don't ever remember living with my dad. No.
Do you remember him before he was killed in the war, seeing him or?
Oh, I used to go up when he remarried. A time or two, I went up and he went on a little trip with he and his second wife. But my grandmother Tree told me the Trees were always very, very good to us. And Grandma Tree told me, she said, I don't know what was the matter with your dad. She said, we had no control over him. She said he'd go for hours and hours and never speak to anybody. And she said, we didn't encourage him. In fact, they sent my dad on a mission right after Mother and Dad were married to try and get him away from some woman, from what I understand.
Oh, interesting.
And he came back. But anyway, no, the Trees were very, very good to us. And they knew that there was a problem there. And my grandmother Tree told me, she said, I didn't know what was the matter with your dad. She said, we didn't know what we could. She said, no matter what we said to him, it didn't matter. So
yeah.
That's just the way it was.
So, do you remember how Dad, when Blaine was born? I know Blaine was born before we went to Iowa, right? Yeah, Blaine was born before. He was a baby in Iowa.
Yeah, that's right.
And why did Dad choose Iowa State? Do you know why we chose there?
I can't remember exactly. It had a reputation for being the kind of college that he thought he wanted to go to. For one thing, I think I'm not positive why, but
that would have been quite a long trip for you back then.
Well, yeah, and besides that, we pulled a trailer, and we had the 3 kids.
4.
Yeah.
4.
Blaine was little. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was.
It was a good time when we lived in Iowa.
Yeah, it was. It was tiny. I mean, we had 2 tiny bedrooms and a tiny front room and a sort of a kitchen.
Yeah, I remember. Where did you work when we lived in Iowa?
At the Fairway store.
Yeah, good grocery store, huh?
Yeah, I did. It was a good grocery store.
And what's his name, Mr. McPherson?
Mm-hmm.
He was your boss. I remember him.
He was a good person. Yeah, he was good to me and good to you kids. So that was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you moved back to Orem.
Yeah, we did. And I was just trying to. We lived in a basement apartment at one time.
When you first got married, maybe?
Yeah, when we first got married, that's when we lived in the basement apartment. I remember that now.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we went back there to school, and we did fine. We were neither one of us used to having too much, and we didn't have to worry about it. So that was good.
Yeah, too much was normal. I do remember you talking about when you lived in Vernal. I was telling Maddie you lived in a chicken coop. You bought a chicken coop and fixed it up.
Well, it wasn't a chicken coop. It was just a garage is what it was, and we fixed it up and lived there.
But I thought that was when you lived in Colville. I thought when you guys bought that place in
Vernal.
What was it?
Just a 1 room.
Just 1 room.
And we built a little flame-to on it. We didn't have running water in, or we had running water out. We had a 3-room or a 2-room or 2-hole toilet down the walk a little ways. Do you remember that one?
No, so it was an outhouse, huh?
Oh yeah, we never had a bathroom in the house when we lived in Vernal.
Yeah, so I think it was just Julie, Kent. I don't know if Kent lived in Vernal, did he? I don't remember. I know, maybe he did. I don't know.
I think so. I have a picture of him, and I think he and both, with when Noreen came to visit or something, I think there's a picture of them someplace. But
Okay.
yeah, I'm not positive. But then when he got an opportunity to go to school, teach while we left Vernal. And Vernal was a good place. It was just that it was out there and there was not much going on. And the thing about Vernal at that time was they still had oil wells out there, and so it was expensive to live out there. And that's why when that piece of property came up for sale, we had that, so we moved into. We were living when we first went there, we were living in the back of somebody's house that they'd made into an apartment. And then we had an opportunity to buy that piece, and so we bought that piece and lived out there for as long as we stayed out there. Vernal was a good place. It was not a bad place. It was just at that time a long ways away.
And then you moved to where Dad taught Evergreen in Sandy.
Sandy, yeah, in that house in Sandy, yeah. You remember that house, don't you?
I do.
Yeah, right next to the Petersons.
Yeah, I think that I liked that house.
Well, it was a good house. It was just like my grandmother's house in Colville, actually. It's the same kind you see around all the time now. But
yeah. I remember that house, and then it was after that we went to Iowa. Yeah, right. And so then you came back to Orem, and tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the city council.
Well, the What I was doing when we lived there, I was teaching the boys. Which boys were they? The ones
The
that were,
Blazers.
huh?
The Blazers.
Yeah, but it used to be with the scout organization too.
Mhm.
And I was teaching them, and so I used to
Oh.
take them to the meetings all the time so they could get it filled one of the requirements. And so I had gone several times, and finally I said, you know, I could do that. And your dad says, I suspect you could. And so that's when I was on the I was on the Shade Tree Commission, but I also got I was 4 years on the city council before I ran for mayor.
I thought you were twice. I thought you were longer on
Beg
the city.
pardon?
I thought you were longer on the city council.
No, I was not. I was only I was 8 years as a
8 years.
Yeah,
yeah.
as a that's true.
And then you ran for mayor.
Yeah, and the first one time when I ran for mayor, I got defeated because at that time the mayor was had been a bishop,
Mm-hmm.
and at that time that was
Criteria.
that was a criteria. Yeah, when I got defeated when I ran for the third time as mayor, I got defeated by a former stake president and bishop, which was not unusual for those times.
No.
So
And what are the things that you're most happy about or proud of that were accomplished when you were mayor?
I don't know. There's one thing more. We did several things. I liked the people on the city council. Some of them were very staunch Republicans, but we were good friends. Harley Gilman was as good a friend as you could ever have, and he was as Republican as there ever was. But he was a good friend, and so are the rest of the people on the council. So I enjoyed being involved in Orem City.
Nielsen's Grove is one thing that you did. You had them buy that land.
I had them buy that land, and one time they had some water that was available in one of the reservoirs, and Harley Gilman said, we don't need that, and I said, we do too need that. I said, we'll buy every ounce of water we can ever get our hands on. And so I was glad we did that. That was one thing we did, and then we established the parks around the city, which is one of the good things that went on in Orem too. Yeah.
And also, didn't the rec center in Orem start when you were the mayor?
No, it was before I was the mayor.
It was before.
Just a little bit before, yeah. Yeah, it was.
But
Harley Gilman.
Yeah.
But who was the one that was
Zimmerman.
Huh?
Was Mr. Zimmerman, Zeke?
Zeke, yeah. He and I were good friends. At first he was very antagonistic because I beat him the first time, and when he came back on the council, but we got to be really good friends. He was a good person, yeah, he was.
Yeah. So, if you were telling your children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren anything that you'd want them to know, what would you want them to know?
Just to be involved with other people, that other people are important. And that's the problem I think right now with a lot of these kids, is they don't have any regard for other people, because why should they? They've never had anything hard to do. They've never had to go to war. They've never had a depression, and they really are, a lot of them, I think, depressed, but because they just don't have a real focus on what they should have to be doing. And so, and they said, I read just recently that they're having a terrible time, these kids. They're having more, and they not doing well in school after they go back after being out. So and part of the problem is they just don't have a reason, I guess. I don't know why they don't, but anyway.
Well, do you have any other memories you'd want to share or tell your family about when you're gone? I mean, how old are you right now?
I'm 92. I'll be 93 in April of this year.
And what's one of your best what are some of your best memories, if you had to say what your life was most important, or what was?
Well, I enjoyed being involved in the city. I enjoyed being in Habitat for Humanity. That's one of the things I really enjoyed doing. But I enjoyed that working in the garden. That was something I enjoyed doing. So I don't know
You
that
said you couldn't do it anymore, right?
well,
Came
no,
to a
I
point
couldn't.
where you just can't.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
you can only do so much. That's about where it goes. That's right. So no, but we had a good life. The,
Yeah.
Well, and I think that is shown by the fact that all 8 of the children are still alive and they're all doing good things. Now, I don't think very many people can claim that, but
Yeah.
they're all doing good things, and I think we did pretty well. We did what we had to do, I guess. A lot of people thought we were crazy because Stan was gone a lot of the time, but we had discussed that before. And if that's what he wanted to do, that was all right. So that's how we got along. So
Yeah.
other than that, I don't know. I had a good time in high school, and Fred Motley, who was my debate partner, he was very, very bright, and we got along just fine, the two of us together. So,
Well,
but he was everything more than he was just a friend.
what do you remember about your dad? You remember much about him? Because he was gone when you were 13, right? He killed when you were 13.
Yeah. When he married Vera Broadhead, and a couple of times I went on a little trip with him out to Vernal or something, and he was all right. He was just what he was. He didn't talk a great deal, but he was always good to me. And he was good. He wrote to us occasionally. I've got 2 or 3 left when he was in the army. So yeah, he was. I don't know what his problem was. Neither does anybody else. So
No.
that's what
Well,
it
that's
was.
okay. I mean, I think people do the best they can with what they know at the time. So,
I would imagine that's true. I think if you took most people, 99% of the people, they do the very best they can. I think they're good people. And sometimes we get focused on that negative stuff, and that isn't where we should be. So, yeah.
so what are your feelings about the church? What is your
Well, I have always been a member of the church. I was born in the church. I've been a member of the church. And one night when we were living in Vernal, when we first went out there, we were living in what was her name, whose home we lived in?
was that Mrs.
I don't know, but anyway, that we lived in her home, and we had the 3 kids then. I was reading in the Book of Mormon, and I got to a certain point, and I knew immediately that the church was true, and I have never doubted it since. So that's just,
yeah.
and there are a lot of things in the church that have been hard and been different, but I've never doubted that the church was true. So
Yeah. Well, it's the church has done a lot of changing
oh my,
in your
look
lifetime.
at what they've done just in the temple just recently.
Yeah.
I had a friend she said, I can't believe what they've done in that temple. And I said, well, think about it. If there are people outside this church or outside of the United States, how many of them understand English real well? And sometimes it just doesn't translate well. So by doing this is one reason I think that it translates better for other people than it does.
I think that's right. And one of the things I think that I got out of it when we went yesterday is some people outside this country and even in the world still have not heard of Jesus Christ. They're other religions.
Oh, listen, I think if you took the LDS church and took every member that it had, it isn't very many compared to how many there are in the world. I mean, you go to look in these countries and you'd say, well, the church is there. Well, they opened the temple back up, in that country that's been at war recently.
Ukraine.
But it's just a small portion.
Oh, tiny.
So, yeah. So, the church we think is very important, but to other people it probably isn't very. So, although it's better with this president that's been with, because he was so well known before in his medical
practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Well, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Not that I can think of. I'll think about it, and if I have, I'll tell you.
Have to come back.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can do another session if you're things that you'd like to say.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Go see how your dad is, for heck's